He's a legit cheat code dynamo, but he's such a dynamic fantasy player. He's proven this year that he is going to hit the ball enough to let all of the other skills.
Like I said, he needed about 30 minutes or so, and then he was going to be able to join. But something to do with one of his kids ran back to the sandbox and decided to keep playing longer. So I don't know. Fuck us if Houskey's going to be able to come on or not. But anyways, here we are on.
I still want to know I want to know two things. I want to know why Houskey only started 5 guys, and I want to know what the hell he's doing in Milford on Labor Day.
I don't even know where Milford is, to be honest. And maybe it wasn't Milford.
Oh, Milford's actually a nice little town. It's on the border of Sussex and Kent County.
No, I'm sorry. He's in Millburn.
Oh, Millburn Orchards. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I'd say Houskey wouldn't be that far south.
I'd never heard of Millburn before, so I guess I only know Milford because I'm so used to driving past it all the way to Dewey.
Millburn's not a town. Millburn's actually it's the really nice pumpkin patch orchard type place. It's on the border of Maryland and Delaware.
Gotcha.
They have fantastic peaches.
I mean, peaches and cream. There's not much better than that in life. Anyways, so Goody, thanks for joining me here on the Proof of Words podcast. I mean, we've basically lost 2 podcasts over the last 2 months. I mean, I don't even know what the hell's going on with Chalking Talk or Talking Chalk. I mean, you guys haven't recorded since post draft. And Streaming Dreams, I mean, Ben's kind of let that die too. We haven't streamed a dream in God knows how long.
We did a Streaming Dreams 2 weeks ago.
I know, it used to be a weekly thing.
And it
was definitely...
Yeah, we did a post-deadline deal, Streaming Dreams. I think that one was pretty good, and I think that one got rave reviews. It was very well received.
I did like that pod. I think Ben certainly brings a certain element to the host chair that, Jamie being the wet blanket that he is, doesn't have that charisma. I mean, Jamie definitely gets more analytical, which is something I enjoy on the podcast when you and him really dive into more of the data shit. But Streaming Dreams is just an infinitely more fun pod, and we need to keep that one going.
Ben is a better fantasy podcast host than he gives himself credit for.
So anyways, here we are. It's the Monday after the season has ended. We are doing this recording on Labor Day. And I mean, we have our 6 teams wrapped up, all set for the playoffs. We have in first place, no surprise there, Duty La Pantera, followed by who actually a lot of people were kind of writing off coming into this year, Ricky. But it turns out he ended up killing it in the draft with his draft capital, and we'll dive into it there. Then third place, no surprise, you. Fourth place, a big surprise to I think.
Hang on, were you awake? You weren't awake. Did you realize what happened last night for Ricky to get the bye?
No, so I did read back through the chat this morning, but there was 400 fucking text messages. I'll wake up and read back if it's 50 texts, but 400 texts were there last night. I just ignored it entirely.
So I was beating Trevor pretty good. And it came down to basically how many categories Ricky was going to take from Houskey. And Houskey, on Thursday, decided to go pretty much pencils down on pitching and just try to salvage ERA and whip. And to give Ricky credit, his team pitched its ass off, with Wheeler and Snell and things like that on Friday, Saturday. So he had flipped those ratio stats, and Houskey had no more moves left. And Houskey's then, got all of his bullpen guys in Sunday to take over ERA, and he took OPS by a point. Then the Sunday night game came. So I, by about 3 o'clock, thought I was totally done on the bye. But then Houskey out of nowhere flips 2 categories right at the end of the 4 o'clock games. So all of a sudden, I think I'm back in the bye now. And right away, Michael Harris Jr., I think it's Michael Harris, the Braves guy for Ricky, his keeper, hits a home run, so that wins him OPS. So that ties us. But I have the tiebreaker on Ricky. I have the tiebreaker on Ricky because I beat him in the regular season the one time we played. So we're going to the night, and Houskey's also going for the number 1 pick. So he needs this last category to get the number 1 pick too, and Ricky needs it to get the number 2 seed. And so Houskey's like, don't worry, it's mathematically impossible for Iglesias to swing ERA because Iglesias is a closer and he only throws 1 inning. I went to bed last night and Iglesias somehow threw 2 innings. Ooh. And he won ERA. He won ERA by 0.02 points, which got Ricky the bye and got Houski to lose out on the number one pick.
Wait, so how close was Houski to the number one pick? Let me pull up this.
He was like he's a game away.
So he was a game. Would he have had the tiebreaker on Evans?
Oh, no, sorry. Wait a minute. Let me take that back. He needed both OPS and ERA to get that.
So he's a game and a half back right now. So, okay.
And he lost 2 categories on the Sunday night game.
Oh, God, that's a pain. So he lost.
Well, think about it from my angle, Pat.
Well, yeah, but it was kind of something that's out of your hands, right? I mean, you're Christian. What's that prayer that y'all say? Give me the strength to know what I can change and know what not to, or whatever. I mean, this is something you couldn't change.
That is a good one. I know, but that's fantasy. It's fantasy baseball. It's all out of our damn hands.
The fantasy gods just did not smile upon you on this particularly bloody Sunday.
They like to torture me. It always comes down to those little .02 ERA or .01 batting average shit, doesn't it?
Well, so I remember making this point. It was either last year or the year prior. We were all at the draft, or we were all together. Maybe it was at Tim's or something like that. And we were all talking about like how, I lost by 1 RBI or whatever, but it's only 1 game, so it doesn't really matter. And I brought up this point, like, look, every time we get to the buys, every time that we get to the playoffs, every one of those positions is determined by 1 game or maybe 2 at the absolute most every single goddamn year. So like the most painful thing is on a Sunday is you're going in, you're up, let's say 10-2, and maybe you only end up winning 8-4. I mean, you kind of literally just let 2 games slip by you right there, which is horribly frustrating, right? A lot of times you end up going into Sunday, like I went into yesterday knowing that I was going to lose. Like I woke up yesterday morning knowing my team was going to lose that week to Mook, which really didn't matter. I wasn't going for the buy or anything like that. It's really just about ego at that point. But I end up flipping it from, I think it was like 4-7-1 in the morning because I had a halfway decent offensive day. I had a really good pitching day. I ended up winning 6-5-1. Again, didn't impact the standings or whatever. Mook and I were destined to play each other in the first round of the playoffs ever since about Wednesday or Thursday this week, it seems.
What about the tiebreaker? I know Mook just beat you, but did you beat him before, or was anything
No,
close on
so Mook is actually the only playoff team that I've played this year that I've actually lost to. So I own the tiebreaker on every team except for Mook because I played, I think, every team twice. Like your team, I don't know what happened the weeks I played you. Your team just went to sleep. I ended up beating you like 9-3 and 10-2.
No, you beat me both times.
Yeah.
It's I actually like this setup. It's like, because that matters a lot. You go into a playoff week knowing you essentially have a half category.
And I think, so Mook beat the shit out of me, if I remember, the first time that him and I played. And then I barely eked out a win this time. So he'll still hold the tiebreaker on me this week, unfortunately. But it is what it is. I just got to beat him square up, right? Like 1 or 2 games, whenever you lose that game on a Sunday, I mean, it has a huge impact on the season. There's probably a game that you maybe lost 18 weeks ago. God knows to who, on a Sunday afternoon that you wrote off at that point in time. But hey, had you won that game that time, you'd actually you'd have the bye.
And you saying that, and it always does happen. I remember Ben saying to me, I think earlier this year, I kind of like, on a Sunday, I decided just to bench, pitchers or something. And I don't know what the result would have been if I would have played him. But I remember I was texting Ben, the group, and I said like, oh, I just rather win 8-4. 8-4 is a good win, like you're saying. And it's like, now it's like, I don't even know what the result would be, but I wish back and I could roll the dice on those 2 categories, or on that category or 2.
So, I mean, and I think a lot of us, and I certainly have been guilty of this myself. I mean, there was a week that I ended up sitting a bunch of my offense and a start or 2 against Bill, just because I wanted to hang on to ERA, average, and OPS. Even though I think there was a few counting stats that were in play that actually, had I played my players, I would have ended up catching the counting stats, and I ended up losing average, I think, that week anyway. And Bill and I tied, if I remember correctly, or maybe I only won by 1 game. I forget exactly. But I mean, if I had just had the mentality of, okay, it's not trying to win this week, it's trying to accumulate wins over a season. And when you start thinking logically like that, it's just a different perspective. You actually are going to start not sitting your players on a week-to-week basis just to pull out maybe 1 or 2 wins that week,
Yeah, I think, I don't know, you can always go back and second guess yourself in these things. And I think the circumstances sometimes do matter in that. I think if you're playing a team a second time and you say, no, they're going to be a playoff team and you want to secure, your tiebreak edge.
That's a very fair point.
But
too.
then you also have to weigh where you are at in the standings, and there's all these unknowns. I mean, I think every single day, I totally agree with you. This course of events and what seems to happen every single year is a great reminder that every week matters, every category matters, even when you're getting your back blown out. If you can squeeze out one or two more categories, on that Sunday, like that can help you later on, I think is the takeaway from this. On the other side, I'll say is I feel like you second guess yourself on everything. Do I start the guy? Do I not start the guy? Mook has his rules. If he doesn't start guys off the IL, he has a couple other ones, and he sticks by them.
I'm kind of facing something similar to that tonight. Even in my first day of a matchup with Mook, I have a guy coming off the IL, Zach Littell. It was only a 15-day, 10-day IL stint. He was absolutely incredible the month before. He has a halfway decent matchup. He's playing Minnesota at home in Tampa, which
is fun. It's funny. All of a sudden, they're a good matchup. I feel like 2 weeks ago they were like, I couldn't throw anybody against them.
Oh no, a month ago you weren't ever going to throw anybody except for like a bona fide ace against Minnesota. Now you can throw anybody and it's going to work, right? So I'm thinking okay, maybe, do I sit him? Do I start him because he's coming off the IL? I'm going to roll with him because he was so great before the IL, and it was only a minor back tweak, so I'm not too worried about the injury. And then Gavin Williams, he hasn't showed anything really this year. A lot of promise last year, injured 90% of this year, right? But he's playing KC, and KC's been god awful outside of Bobby Witt. So I'm kind of in the same situation. I'm like sweating over here. Do I start Gavin? Do I not start Gavin? I have a couple extra starts from starters this week that I can play around with, but I also kind of want to come. I'm like looking at this going like, why the fuck did I keep this guy if the very first day of the playoffs I'm not even going to start the asshole?
And that was my next question. Like, why is he on your roster? Are you keeping him? If you believe in him that
I
much,
can't keep him this year.
You're not throwing him against the Royals on a Monday.
Yeah. So the thing
is, I had the similar thoughts this morning of. So Jared Jones came off the IL last week.
Right.
Obviously, he was really good beforehand. He was elite the first couple months. Then he was just pretty good, for a month or so, and then he got hurt. And so I started him his first start back. He started all right, then fell apart, went 4 innings against Cubs. He's playing the same Cubs this Monday. And I was thinking that, I'm like, do I bench him? And it's like, well, no, this is a guy I decided at the trade deadline. Like, I'm keeping this guy. If I can't win with throwing him on a Monday against the Cubs, then I gotta wear that. I gotta,
right.
That's my team. I'm not only committed to Jared Jones I committed to him this year when I decided not to trade him at the deadline, but also I am keeping him. So he, if you don't believe in him at this point, and it's a second start, so hopefully he'll be stronger, but it's kind of like, I want to lose with that guy on the mound,
Which makes perfect sense. Gavin's not that guy for me. I kept him coming into this year because
there's a difference between Jones and Gavin Williams. I think
huge,
right now too.
Gavin was a good young keeper coming out of last year. Hurts his arm in spring, fucks his entire year. There's no way I can keep him right now going into next year, but he's also shown a lot of upside in a couple of starts this year. So for me, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, I remember the week I played you. I was like, God, of course I got the good Gavin Williams
exactly
start.
Right. And he almost shut out KC last time that he played him. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I'm done talking about Gavin Williams. I want to take a look back, a retrospective on how this season went. Gavin.
Sorry. I wanted to recap last night. And we're going. Yeah, sorry.
No, I love it. So let's look back on the season. This was a tumultuous season for a lot of teams. A lot of guys came into this with ridiculously high expectations of themselves, and for one reason or another,
as they should.
As they should. Everyone should have high hopes. Draft day is the best day of the year because we all believe that we have a chance that year, right? Some fell flat on their faces, namely looking at Ben. Others, sorry, Ben, but you couldn't join us tonight, so I'm going to give you shit for it.
Ben's not here to defend himself.
No, he's not. We invited him here to defend himself, but I don't know what he's doing. And then others, Ricky, I think a lot of people wrote off Ricky to begin this year because he had hardly any draft capital, right? And he ends up absolutely nailing it. He ends up squeaking out into the bye. So for you, looking at this season, whose team, which manager for you was the biggest disappointment coming out of that draft relative to where they ended up in their season?
It's got to be either Howsky or Bill, right? I mean, we always love Houseke's team, but I feel like this is recurring.
I feel like this is a recurring text chat that we've had for the last 5 or 6 days. Like, oh yeah, Houseke's team sucks, but we can't wait for next year for Housky, and everybody's on that bandwagon.
And I think I think those two names are for two kind of different reasons. Like, Housky, we always love his team, and it's kind of another like letdown disappointment. Bill, it's more we haven't talked about this a lot, but the years go on of Bill not making the playoffs. Yeah. And he had extra picks last year. I liked the picks that he made. He has a good pitching staff. I don't know what it quite is that he can't put it together. Clearly, Matt Olson decided to not be good until like August when he was out of it. Yeah. So maybe that's it. But I was most disappointed in Bill. He was the guy on one of the preseason pod that I said would make the playoffs. So,
I mean, Bill had a couple of unfortunate things happen to him this year. I mean, if you look at his team, right? Okay, I mean, one thing that we can say that went incredibly well for Bill is Paul Skeens comes up and basically
he had a good stable of guys, of pitchers, and then he had Skeens, who's been elite for, call it, 15 starts.
Exactly. Skeens, you could make an argument. I mean, I'm seeing people easily throw him in top 10 right now. You can make an argument for top 5. And then fantasy Twitter is calling him the top dynasty pitcher already. I'm not sure if I'm there yet, but I mean, it's very hard to argue. And I mean, looking back, you and I can maybe be honest about ourselves about this. I mean, last year, the rookie draft, I don't think I would retroactively say I'm happy or I would take Paul Skeens over Wyatt Langford. I still believe in Wyatt long term. But I mean, if we're looking at the 3 players right now, Skeens is light years ahead of Wyatt and Cruz right now. I mean, would you
I think that was to be a little bit expected, in that if you were looking for a more instant impact, it's always going to be the pitcher. But the pitcher, Skeens can tear his elbow tomorrow, and then all of a sudden,
which is the only reason why I would say I don't think I would change my pick if I had a gun to my head.
But so I'm going to say, and I think I still fully believe in Cruz, and to this day, I still am happy with Cruz over Langford. And we don't need to get into that on this pod. We'll probably save that for an off-season pod. But if I could go back today and say I have Paul Skeens pitching in a playoff week for me right now, I'd take it. And it was the same reason why I took Jackson Jobe over Samuel Basallo in the rookie round, and it's that I thought Jackson Jobe had a better chance to help my team this year.
So let me ask you this. Let's say that the trade deadline hadn't passed. We're sitting where we are right now. You're in the playoffs. You could swap Paul Skeens for Dylan Cruz today. Yes, trade would process overnight. You'd do that?
Yeah. Yep, I would do that.
I think I would too. But would you rather keep Dylan Cruz going into next year, or would you rather keep Paul Skeens?
That's harder to say. I feel like based on this performance, and you got to remember, I'm going to keep 5 pitchers this year. So
right.
Cruz is a way better fit for my team. However, I could totally see how, given what we know of after seeing, it's 18 starts of Skeens, although there's the risk, there's the proof that he is elite versus MLB hitters and can do that, and we've seen it all already, where it's like Langford and Cruz, and this tends to happen with hitters. We've seen it with other hitters, and that it takes longer to adjust, where it's like guys that are guys who have the arm talent of Skeens, you see it right away. And you just know, and your only question is, can he make 30 starts and will he get hurt? Which that's a lot less questions than is Wyatt Langford going to hit 25 more home runs next year? Or is Dylan Cruz going to, be able to handle high heat or something like that? Like that those type of questions take almost probably 2 full seasons to figure out. Whereas Skeens, it's like, we know.
Exactly. And I think that's where Skeens is.
Oh my God. Here he comes.
Oh my God. Who's this asshole? Ladies and gentlemen, it is Michael J. Housky joining the chat.
So anyway, Housky, we'll hit you with the question real fast.
Sure.
Because we brought up the idea going back to the rookie draft, if Pat or I could trade Wyatt Langford or Dylan Cruz for Paul Skeens and get him on our roster today, I said I would do it. I'm pretty sure Pat said he would do it. But then the next question was dynasty rank of like, given what you know about Skeens, do you still take basically who would you still like out of those three going forward if you were keeping them for next year?
Who? Skeens, Cruz, or who's the last one?
Langford.
Langford. I mean, obviously it's got to be Skeens. I mean, who would say otherwise?
I think so too. I said given my team construct, I could see myself leaning Cruz still, being that I have 5 keeping starters, but I generally would go Skeens.
Yeah, I mean, like at this point, I'm seeing Skeens go in some of these dynasty or even normal drafts, like in the first, second round.
Yeah,
Of overall drafts. Yeah, there's no. I mean, Cruz or
crazy.
Langford ain't going anywhere close to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
No argument there. Bill ended up getting a hell of a player. I think all three of us ended up getting great players. No buyer's remorse on Langford, and I don't sense any from your side, Ian, but I mean, certainly right now.
Now, Cruz has got 2 home runs in the first week, man. We're riding high.
Yeah. But I think right now, you both of us would say we'd rather have Skeens on the roster in this playoff season rather than that. But actually, Housekeeping, how we ended up on that conversation is I asked the goodie coming into now that we're coming into the playoffs, the season's behind us. Who are the biggest disappointments? And he brought up that his biggest disappointment this season was Bill, just because we thought this maybe is the year that Bill does get over that hump, get into the playoffs. He had the roster construction, draft capital, Paul Skeens eventually coming up to be able to do it. But I think if we were to ask the league, the general consensus, if we're being honest, is probably that you were, once again, the biggest disappointment. Would that be a sentiment you reflect?
No, yeah, for sure. I definitely thought I should have made the playoffs, and I didn't anticipate obviously some guys having extremely down years. One being Corbin Carroll, who was literally a negative for most of the year. I mean, I guess you could say it was buoyed by Soto, but then I don't know. I pretty much had to turn over my entire keeper set from like a year ago at this point. So I don't know what else I could have done. I don't regret any when I traded off. Felt like I had a decent draft, although Buxton may not have panned out. He was on a production basis per at bat when he played, he was great. Obviously Diaz was a disappointment, but
it's funny you drafted both. Well, you drafted Buxton aggressively, and then I remember you drafted like Correa in like a 7th or 8th round. Both of those guys end your season on the IR. Neither only one of them eclipsed 300 at bats, and that was Byron Buxton with 305.
I tell you, when you keep 4 pitchers and most of them aren't good, it's not good. It's very tough to build an offense out of the draft. I will say that you got to really have rock solid hitting keepers that can kind of buoy you through. And I pretty much only had Soto. That was the only hitter I had who hit. Albies didn't hit. Obviously, Carroll didn't hit.
Churion Carroll only recently came on.
Yeah, well, Chourio is he's been since about the June.
Sure, I think Chourio has been as good as you could have expected.
Dude, he was a negative at the beginning of the year, put me in a hole.
Yeah, but you know that going into the year.
Sure,
like,
100%. Yeah. No, he's been awesome lately.
And so I didn't realize this, but I didn't realize Grayson Rodriguez has less than 120 innings. And then Cole Raggins is your only pitcher that has over 150 innings that's on your roster. Now, granted, you traded away Michael King and some others, I'm sure.
Burns.
But I feel like Burns, too. But I feel like Raggins the last month or so has been worn down or something.
Yeah, I mean, he's never gone, I don't think, ever over 150 in his career. So this is uncharted territory for him. So for sure, he's not tested, although he's been, obviously a great pitcher. But
still making 28 starts, so that's good.
But no, I had to get out from under Burns. I really felt like he was on a downward swing at this point. Duty reiterated to me again at the party that he's not keeping him. So I don't think I was wrong to get out from under Burns. I mean, I don't know. He's obviously okay right now, but his stuff has not been the same. It was trending not since the beginning of the year, and I still think Lewis is an asshole and I hate him, but I still think he'll be a good player. So, I don't know. I don't regret any move I made. So that's why I look back and go, obviously maybe not drafting Buxton where I did. I still think Diaz was the right call at the time. I mean, obviously it didn't work out, but I don't think I was necessarily reaching at that point in time. No. You were going to take him in the first round too. So
I was going to take Diaz. I learned never, because the 2 closers I like the best were Diaz and Duran, and I don't ever want to draft a closer in the first round again.
I mean, look, my Roto was a top 6 team, although it's Shimoto. I was the unluckiest team in the league. So I don't really know what other move I would have made differently. So obviously, yeah, I agree. It was the biggest disappointment, but I just don't think there was a glaring mistake that I made. So, that's where the cookie crumbles sometimes.
So to summarize it all, Howski takes no responsibility.
That's kind of what I got there.
He thinks
Yes.
I take no responsibility for my
exactly.
third failed season in a row.
Yes.
That's.
But hey,
All right.
I was also turning my core over in those 3 seasons. I mean, I had.
But hey,
it was
not a wasted season, and you did turn it over, and I'm gonna love this team next year. I know I will, even more than I loved it last year.
I mean, going into next year, you definitely are in the pole position with draft capital. You got 3 first-round picks, 2 3s, 2 4s, 2 6s. I mean, okay, great.
And I gotta say, the dynamic of this, and I talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the pod before Howski was on, about how both the number 1 pick was in contention along with the bye week in the same matchups, which I thought was awesome. I feel like this has a whole nother dynamic that like Howski's retooled himself. He's got, even though he missed out on the number 1 pick, he gets the number 2 pick. So even if Corbin Burns goes number 1, he gets the next guy after that, or maybe he gets Corbin Burns back. I don't know, or somebody else that he likes more than Corbin Burns. But I think this is going to be a really ongoing cool dynamic, not only for just keeping teams competitive and all of that, but also for a team being able to even further rebound even more, in that like Howski sold off things, but he only sold them off on getting really high picks for them, because if not, he wanted them to keep for his, in his pursuit for the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, I think this. I voted against it, and I said like yesterday, could not have been more wrong. That this was such a fun dynamic. I was engaged to the end. I just like I said, I think it raised asset prices, because it's like, yeah, what are you gonna do? Get a 6th-round pick, or you're gonna use it to try and get the number 1 overall pick? All right, cool. Let's just use it and try and improve my draft position. I don't need to sell this for rock bottom prices. I think you saw people like Ricky was one of them. Jamie was definitely one of them, where they were just going hunting these low prices. And it's like, look, I just won't sell to you. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if I get nothing. Ultimately, it's still on my team is an asset, because it moves me to a higher draft position. So I think overall, I think we stumbled into something that's just amazing for this league.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the type of dynamic that I know I've wanted for multiple years, and to see it play out in the first year, I think it was perfect.
I mean, the only real issue so we've historically had the Jamies of the league and a handful of others that have tried to exploit the bottom feeding teams, that they're going to try to trade a 7th or 8th round pick for a player that realistically should be traded for a 2nd or 3rd. But hey, everybody's already spent their draft capital, so they just come in and grab these players for unbelievably cheap lately. We've had that take it to the grave concept for, I guess, like 2 years or so now. Which has actually kind of worked out pretty well for the managers that have done so. Howski, it's worked for you in the past. It worked for me in the past. I didn't need draft capital last year coming into this year to compete. And now we're seeing a dynamic where the Jamies cannot buy those unbelievably cheap assets for pennies on the dollar relative to what the actual draft cost should have been. The only instance that I saw this time through the entire trade deadline of something that looked not even entirely egregious, but something that you would really bat your eyes at, was whatever the fuck deal Brendan did with Jamie.
Yeah, and we mentioned that on our Stream and Dreams.
Exactly.
That, like, we reviewed every deal, and we were like, that was the only one that it's like, what the hell? But
the fact that there was only one, I think, is a great step in the right direction, right?
Yeah. No, I totally agree, and it was great. And I think it's interesting too from the other angle of, a team like Howski that was able to rebuild his keeper set, so to speak, and make a trade for a guy like Bobby Miller, get rid of Albies, get rid of Burns, add Royce Lewis. He was kind of able to move things around a lot, but then also still get a pretty high pick too. I think to add on to that is cool.
Yeah, because I even turned Reynolds into Michael King. Actually, I wouldn't have gotten a 1 and a 3 for Reynolds. No question about it. That wouldn't happen.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Luke might have.
Yeah, I don't know. Potentially.
Well, so here's the one. So now that
I wouldn't have.
Now that we've gone the full season with this, the only question that kind of is outstanding for me on what the impact of the reverse snake or the reverse draft order will be on this actual upcoming draft. Because historically, okay, you always have the bottom teams with the top 3 picks. And typically those are the teams that are in a rebuild mode. They're not going to even really be competing that upcoming year. And those picks usually go to not necessarily these year players. It has happened that way in the past, but they've usually always been used on young and up and coming players. So for instance, this year for me, it was Joe Ryan, right? Relatively established, had not yet achieved that kind of ace level recognition. I was right about him. Turned out this year he was there. But every year we've always seen a kind of more younger dynasty type player picked in that first or second overall pick for the rebuilding teams. This year, we're going to see Evan and Houski there. Evan and Houski are going to be competing in the next year. That's unquestionable. If Corbin Burns is there, then very likely he'll go. But on the other side of this is also I might not be able to keep Chris Sale this year. I mean, Chris Sale's probably going to be the NL Cy Young. He's going to be 36, 37 years old maybe next year going into it. It's going to be a TBD. I mean, I'm going to have optionality on it, but I might be throwing Chris Sale back. Is that somebody that maybe a Evan or Houski takes that early, hoping that he can keep the fire that he caught this year? Whereas historically, that type of player wouldn't even ever be considered as a top 3 pick. What are your thoughts there?
If Chris, yeah, I 100% agree with. If Chris Sale was there, and I mean, because say it's Burns, Sale, I would be happy with either one of them. But yeah, I would say for sure that you're probably looking at more of a this year player for me and Evan. Although I think Evan has room for maybe a younger player in his keeper set. But I definitely can see it being more of a this year focus for the couple picks. I can even see myself trying to move down potentially too if there's a guy who wants it this year and I want more of it. I definitely am trying to look around and move around the board for sure.
My number 1 waiver, or my number 2 waiver, will be available.
So here's my question about this.
I gotta
have
off,
we
guys.
actually negative?
Loved having you, Houski. Have a good one.
See you, Houski. So here's my question there. Have we actually created enough negative incentive for the bottom feeding teams to not tank? Because theoretically then, the competing teams are going to go for this year players, most likely going into the next year. They're not going to go for maybe the higher upside player because they're going to need something guaranteed in the season that they're going to be competing in still. And does that mean that some of the more younger players, like I'm just going to use Joe Ryan as the example, does Joe Ryan maybe not slip in that draft anyway to a later point in the first round where the last place team or the second to last place team still has the chance to draft that young upside player? Like, I actually think it's going to work out kind of the same.
I think it will. I think our league values so much usually if there is a young player that has that kind of potential, it's really hard to slip through your 8 keepers, first of all. But 2, you get through there because you have question marks. And I think even then, if somebody is if there's an intriguing enough of a player, I think I agree with your assessment that, teams like a Houski or an Evan that are not as, they don't need 4 extra keeper guys that are going to be good. Like, they have their 8 already. They're going to be way more inclined to just take a this year guy. However, I think if there is actually like young promising talent of, say, a hitter who's 25 years old or a pitcher who's, similar thing, like 25, 26 years old, who's, like you said, like a Joe Ryan, I think no matter what, you're going to take him because somebody like that, it's like you envision them helping you both that year, but then also being a potential keeper. And that will always outweigh just getting a 1-year guy, say it's Sale. It could be Sale this year. It could have been Verlander a couple of years ago, guys that are thrown back in that are clearly, you feel good about getting them for a year, but that they could easily die and that be the end of them.
All right, so we've touched on your biggest disappointments for this year. Started with Bill, and luckily we had Houski opportunistically join us exactly when we were going to start talking about him. So who are the biggest surprises for you this year?
Ricky actually is not for me. He did not have a bunch of high picks, but he had a ton of 4th and 5th round picks, so he was able to build a lot of guys. And he also had the fortunate break of getting Blake Snell due to the contract. I thought about when you said you might not keep Sale, that it's like, wow, the second year in a row, we're going to have the NL Cy Young winner in the draft again. Yeah. Then.
Well, okay, but different circumstances. One is age, the other was
different circumstances. Totally different.
Snell
totally different
wasn't signed.
Yeah. We had no, and I didn't want to play chicken with Scott Boras. All right. And I give Ricky a lot of credit for this in that this was not an easy road for him, even with the extra draft capital. I think I give him credit, one, for committing all into this year, in that I think he had, after having a down year last year with guys like Trey Turner in his first half season with the Phillies, Lindor similarly too.
Yeah.
His core set was kind of at the end of the window was narrowing, and I like that he committed all in on saying, all right, I'm going to try and, just retool it and still win with these guys. And those guys each had really good years. I mean, Turner and Lindor each had, Lindor especially. Lindor's 29 home runs, 25 stolen bases.
I mean, Turner, at least when he's been healthy. So Turner's sitting at 15-15 right now, 300 average, 800 OPS. Okay.
Yeah, he was hurt, but he's hitting 300.
Yeah.
Not, Mook keeps bringing up there's only like 10 guys that do that. He on a per rate basis, Turner's been very good as well. But it's not been easy for Ricky, even with all of that draft capital, and that I know earlier in the year he had a ton of injuries. Snell was on and off the IL and was ineffective. He had a number of guys. I remember looking at his roster one time, and he had like 3 guys with flags on them that were on his bench. And so he kind of slogged along. He kept streaming. Some people say it was crazy the rate he was hitting, like streaming. He's streaming dreams at, so to speak, to coin our other podcast. But he doesn't surprise me. But I want to give him a lot of credit for the season that he had and all.
I think Ricky's proved himself to be a better in-season manager than I think anyone really gives him much credit for. Like, whenever we talk about in-season management, we talk about we talk about Mook to a certain extent. We certainly talk about Trevor, although that can be debated lately.
But at this point, yeah.
But hey, I'm going to throw Ricky's name in the hat there. I think that's somebody that we need to talk about in-season, week-to-week management. A guy that's always had halfway decent keepers. He's always been in the, I don't want to say elite class of keepers, but he's always been in the upper echelon. At least ever since he figured out
during this period of having Turner and Lindor.
There's 2 different Ricky. There's the Ricky that was the first 3 to 5 years in the league. That was kind of the wide-eyed doe and still trying to figure it out, I guess. And then there's the Ricky that's been in here the last 3 to 5 years. That has been a perennial contender, it seems.
And I was thinking about this morning when I was just thinking about missing out on the bye and how pissed off I was. And it's like, I mean, you got to give Ricky credit too. I think no matter what, there's an adjustment period of this league, but Ricky has clearly gotten better in the last 3 years at this too.
Yep.
I think. But to answer your original question of who was my biggest surprise of this year, I actually am going to give you credit, Pat. You were my biggest surprise, and I am going to eat my crow.
Donka goody.
I'm going to eat my crow on saying I thought you had the worst roster in the league. I know I said that. I know I've said the last 4 months that I never said that, but I said that, and so I'm going to give you credit. And the biggest thing I'm going to eat crow on is I hated how much hype Ellie De La Cruz got. I think I have said this on multiple pods now this year that he really is he's a legit cheat code dynamo, whatever you want to use the terminology. He is not a perfect player in any stretch of the
God,
word,
no.
But he's such a dynamic fantasy player, and I see now why it was. I would have never drafted this guy in a 1-year league because I don't like those kind of wide range of outcomes, but I think he's proven this year that he is going to hit the ball enough to let all of the other skills play. Really, the exceptional speed and stealing bases, but also his power. And so I want to eat crow on that. And then I also I think you did a pretty positive job managing this year as well. Your commitment to your guys, I think, a number of them took a step forward. I think, I think you did. I'm not going to say you did the best job ever or that I think you're one of the best managers, because I don't think that, but I will give you credit on this year. And I think you were the biggest surprise to me this year.
If we were to ask the league, I'm pretty sure that will be the consensus. I'm not going to talk about myself too much. Obviously, there's a certain bias there. I do believe I'm the 3rd best manager in the league, which I think everybody has to understand that as a joke.
Everybody,
I do not genuinely believe I'm the 3rd best manager in the league, but as long as it still continues to piss Ben off the way that it does, I'm going to keep saying it. Hopefully he listens to this podcast and he finally understands. I mean, I've always had myself on that tier with Houski. honestly don't think anything's necessarily changed since then. We'll see if I win the championship this year, but I mean, I just like this year. This team has surprised me to a certain extent because if you look back like a few years ago. So I went about this rebuild, the Uber, the undisputed best rebuild ever, exclusively in teardown mode. And I don't think anybody has done a teardown and a rebuild to the absolute extreme as I've tried to accomplish over the last 2 years. Nobody's gone to the extent of having a roster of basically 8 rookies and sophomores. And if you include the rookie keepers, it's 10 rookies and sophomores. I basically looked at my roster, which was, okay, back then, Yelich, JD, Fat Lynn, Darvish, I mean, aging keepers. My window was shut. I was trying to get to the championship that year, finished first in the league. Speed kicked my ass in the playoffs. So here I am, right? Rebuilding the last 2 years. I looked at this and said, okay, I can either do kind of what Goody's strategy always is continue to roll over aging players with replenishing it with young dynamic players, right? And that's kind of been your bread and butter for a while and why you've always been able to make the playoffs year after year after year. Well, 2-3 years of me keeping Brendan Rodgers and Alex Reyes and the rookie thing really kind of fucked me on that. I mean, if I do have a regret, it would be that I was so high on those guys and wasn't willing to cut bait with them when maybe I should have, because I probably would have been able to churn over some players and replace the Yelichs and the JDs, et cetera. But I didn't go that way. So I had to do a full teardown, and my logic was, okay, fine, I just need to acquire as many top 20 prospects as humanly possible because maybe half of them will turn out. And even if half of them turn out, great. You hit 50% of a lottery. I mean, you're doing fucking incredible, right? And
absolutely.
I mean, the way I'm looking at it now is I have Ellie. Ellie's a top 10, arguably top 5 asset. Riley Green's certainly shown that he's a top 10 outfielder. Langford, jury's out, but he's a rookie, so we'll see as he develops over the next year or two. James Wood looks like an absolute fucking freak. He's a less speedy, more powerful Ellie De La Cruz. Manzardo, jury's out. I know everybody hates him, but I honestly see nothing but one of the most professional hitters ever. So we'll see what happens there. Adley,
and you will die on that hill.
I'm going to die on that hill. But hey, I have a third rookie slot to die on. It's not like I have to worry about Rodgers and Reyes anymore eating those slots. I can die on the Manzardo hill and it not hurt me too much. Adley and Volpe started hot to begin the year and have been shit for the last couple of months. Who knows? But hey, if those are the two that I miss on and the rest I hit, I call that a fucking win.
Yeah. No, I think Volpe doesn't surprise me. I've never been too high on him. Adley is the one that disappoints me a little bit.
Adley's been very disappointing ever since about mid-June. I don't know what's going on there. I think there's something deeper going on in the Orioles organization. Even if you look at Gunner's been damn near ice cold over the last month.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He hasn't been hitting very well
either. He was on pace for like
there's something going on inside that organization with the new ownership and management that, I mean, I said this months ago. It's just weird what's happening over at the Orioles.
It must be, and because Adley, it all lines up. It's, he was drafted number 1 overall ahead of Bobby Witt Jr. He has been very solid. He should be a catcher cheat code in that he bats pretty much every single day, and he plays on a good team, and all these things. And then you look at his line, and you just see, he has a 733 OPS. He has, good counting numbers for a catcher, I guess, but there's at least 5 other catchers who have better home runs, RBIs, or runs than him, So he's a disappointment for me.
He is for me.
One other thing I wanted to give you credit on was, and the reason why you had such a good year was, I think a big reason was obviously you got to pick up a rooker, and I think that was good. But I think you did a good job in the draft of, you didn't have a ridiculous amount of draft capital, but you totally just said, all right, I'm going to let all of my young hitters be either they're going to click and hit, or they're not. But I'm going to focus my draft capital on assembling starters. And as much as Rodon's been an up and down year, he's been well worth his draft capital. Bailey O'Bear has been a great pick. Joe Ryan was a great pick. Chris Sale, obviously exceptional pick. But you nailed on all of that in the first through 4 rounds on the pitching side of things. That you could, if you hit on all of them, you could put together a pitching staff of 5 guys pretty quickly. And you were able to do that. So that's what I'm giving you credit for as well.
And I think it's easy. So my logic on that was it's clearly easier to build a pitching staff than it is an offense.
In a
In a 1 year, absolutely. But keeper long term, I mean, pitching's a shit show. It's impossible.
Oh, the chances of Aubert, Rodon, Sale, and Ryan all being this good next year are probably like 4%.
Next to nothing.
Like that,
yeah.
all of them would still be that good in that combination because pitching is so much more volatile. But in a 1 year, it's like you could assemble 4 or 5 really good guys if you hit it all right.
I mean, and hell, arguably, you haven't even hit on the 2 of my staff that have actually, I think, really was what put me over the edge. Zach Littell and Chris Sanchez. I think they were 7th and 8th round picks.
You really love Zach Littell that much?
Dude, he's got a 3.8 ERA, 129 innings. I mean, okay, he's not getting many QS, but he's been my 7th starter, 8th starter all year. Having that guy that's sub 4 as your 8th, 7th starter is incredibly valuable.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's because I had guys like Jose Soriano during the year, like obviously Ronaldo Lopez has been awesome that that have been like that guy for me that I just think like, oh, Zach Littell.
It's not a sexy thing. I'll give you that.
So my thing is with a pitcher, I need them to do one of a couple things. I need them either to strike guys out or I need them to get quality starts in that type of range guy. And that's my thought. Like Ronaldo Lopez never goes more than 6 innings. A lot of times he either goes 5 or 6 innings, but he's been getting me both strikeouts and good ratios. Or I could take a guy who only goes 5 innings there, but strikes out 8 guys. Zach Littell does neither of that for me. But other than just being a guy that you don't have to stream a guy every week. Because I think I can find a Zach Littell type in a streaming matchup every week.
You might be able to, or it's just, I mean, my strategy was just don't even risk it. Just play your meat and
fair enough. Yeah.
Like he might not even be meat and potatoes. I mean, he's just a flat out bratwurst and potatoes guy, right? He's subpar meat.
That's when you put it like that, I guess it makes sense.
It just made sense to me. And like, I don't know, coming into this year, I just had a very different mentality. Like we always talk about how this isn't a dynasty league. And in fact, it's not. Like technically speaking, our league is not a dynasty league, right? But I would posit to you like this, and I think this is just where I think differently than just about everybody else, except I think you and Howsky to a certain extent. I still do view our league as largely a dynasty league, and the reason being is that I don't think we're necessarily a true keeper league either, right? I mean, so technicalities, yeah, we are a keep 8 plus 2, now 3 rookies every year. But the thing about keeper leagues is at least every keeper league that I've ever heard of or am familiar with, let's say like 90 to 95% of them, there's a cost associated with keeping players, right? It's either a relative draft pick based on performance or it's an auction dollar value. So there's always a cost. We're the only league that I'm familiar with, and I could be wrong. If other people know leagues like ours, please speak up, obviously. But like we are the only league that I know of where you keep 8 and there's no cost associated with it whatsoever. You just keep 8, no questions asked. They're your keepers. And I mean, anybody that's familiar in business or just any managerial style, I mean, you know this, the 80-20 rule, right? The 20% of your assets contribute to 80% of your team's overall success. This is something that's prevalent in business.
From my time at JP Morgan, I changed it to the 90-10 rule.
And that's actually probably true in a big org like that, right? It's the 90-10 rule. So 10% of your assets.
Yeah, I always just like to throw that caveat out there.
Perfect. But I mean, like either way, in investments, portfolio construction theory, 20% of your assets will equal 80% of your net gains. In the NFL, Howie Roseman builds his team with 20% of his assets being allocated his salary cap because they're going to be 80% of the net success. I would argue that our keepers year to year, our league's keepers, probably contribute to maybe not 80, but 70% of net value above replacement level, not gross value because there's 18 other slots on the roster, but net value above replacement level for the entire team at the end of the season, which means, in my view, we are 80% a dynasty league. So we are more dynasty league than we are keeper league. And I mean,
I see your argument. I totally think that's what you're saying in the analysis is true in that the and I always say the clearest way to sustainable success in this league is to get the 8 best keepers that you can have. That alone is not going to get you to a good year. You still need to manage on top of that, and you still need to, make good pickups along the way. But the biggest differentiator, the biggest common denominator of a a team that is like, look at Duty's team. Duty's team has been a bye 3 years in a row now. It is because he has had the best keeper set.
Look at your team and look at Jamie's team. Maybe not,
and mine too. Like, I'm not giving myself a ton of credit.
Historically, the decade before that, it was entirely based on you guys having elite keeper sets.
And I totally decided that kind of this year. Earlier in the year, I was quick to trade Bo Bichette. I kind of quickly, I decided I was going to keep 5 pitchers because I just kind of was like, and I kind of thought about this at the beginning of the year too. It's like, all right, my offense will be good because I have Bobby Witt Jr., Jordan Alvarez, and Rafael Devers, and I can just plug Jock Peterson or Brandon Lowe around that and build the second best offense in the league with that. It just because I have my 3 really good teams.
Exactly.
That's how much those guys matter. I do agree. I get to it a different way, but I agree with you in that, like, the 8 keepers are the single most valuable and most meaningful thing to a successful season in this league.
Exactly, which is why I say, like, yes, by definition, we are a keeper league, but I think functionally and operationally, we are more like a dynasty league than we are a traditional keeper league year to year.
It's because once you get that guy, then you just keep him. And there's no added cost to the fact that, Ohtani's a 40-40 guy and is going to go number 1 in next year's draft. There's no first year player draft I'm referencing. There's no added cost to that. Once you get him, you get him.
Exactly. So now that we've kind of touched on looking at the retrospective of this season past, let's move forward to the playoffs. That's kind of the crux of why we wanted to have this conversation. We have 6 teams in the playoffs, the 2 teams with the bye, of course, Duty and Ricky. The 4 teams that are going up against each other this week are the 3 and 6 seeds, yourself and Jamie, as well as the 4 and 5 seeds, myself and Mook, respectively. An interesting exercise that I did actually read back enough in the chat last night to see. Trevor put out a power rankings of who he had in the playoffs. If you had a gun to your head, how would you rank these playoff teams in a power rankings coming into this first week?
So the way I would rank them in the orders of who I wouldn't want to play in a 1-week matchup against. Do you mean that way? Like if I basically have like, or just, okay, who are the best teams?
I would say like just who are the best teams. Because I mean, like, I would say the team I would rather play least would be like someone like you. But I think Duty's got the top team coming into the playoffs, right?
Gotcha. So I think power ranks. I think Duty's the clear number 1 team. I think I'm the clear number 2 team in my mind. I think Ricky is number 3. It gets tough for me deciding between you and Mook's team. And then I'd put Jamie as 6. Still, I think you and Mook are pretty parity. However, I'd probably lean your team in this season right now that you're having. I just think, I think like Sale's still been really good. I think the Ellie De La Cruz is healthy and humming and all that, and I think Mook's got a better offense. Obviously, Mook has a better offense.
I have a mid offense at that.
It's not as big of a increase on offense as say like Duty, and not to put myself in Duty's realm of offense, but Mook said it to me after I blew him out. We were hanging out together, and he's like, "Yeah, I can't compete with you and Duty. Like, you guys just have too many star players that you're never going to go a week without one of those guys having a huge week, whether it's Bobby Witt Jr. or Jordan Alvarez or Aaron Judge or Jose Ramirez or whatever." It's like Mook needs to have Gunnar Henderson hit 5 home runs in a week to compete, where it's like, because the week that I played Mook, Rafael Devers didn't do anything, and I smoked him because Bobby Witt Jr. did. Bobby Witt Jr. and Jordan Alvarez hit. So Mook doesn't have enough of those guys because Acuna's hurt right now that you versed him offensively is still enough of a game of chance. Whereas I think your pitching staff you have way more depth than he does. And you have a significant edge there.
I mean, Mook even said it, I think, yesterday. Coming into this week, I'm already up 3-0 to 9. Right.
And I'm running into that with Jamie right now because I just don't steal that much bases. But yeah, that's a big edge in mattering too. In that if you're getting more saves and more stolen bases and you have a tie break, it's like you're going down 3.
Exactly. I mean, so in my power rankings, I think would be very similar to yours. I have Duty as the clear cut number 1. I mean, I think it's pretty indisputable. I mean, if Burns really is who he's been over the last few weeks, I would say I'm not.
I don't believe it.
I don't either. That's the thing.
Yeah. Like next start, I feel like Corbin Burns could strike out 10 guys and go 7, and I would be like, yep.
There's the Burns that we've known for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
But if Duty doesn't have that Burns, so I think Duty's team is better than mine. But in a week-to-week matchup, I'm very confident in my team over Duty's, just because he doesn't have pitching outside of that, right? So I would actually.
I don't know. I like his staff.
I don't compare it to mine or yours. I think you and I have proven to be light years ahead of everybody else in this league pitching wise. And losing Joe Ryan has hurt me a bit. But unless he gets Burns, I'm not worried about Duty's pitching staff. But either way, I say he's the top team by power.
You don't realize how good he got Aaron Getty for nothing last week and 4 different managers. I know you and I both.
Yeah. I put my waiver in for Getty.
Like he's been 10 plus strikeouts 3 out of his last 5 starts. Like that in a 1 week matchup, if you're getting that from your 5th or 6th starter, and you get a 10 strikeout game, that's a huge swing in your weekly matchup. Similarly, I don't know. I know from playing him, it's like even when Singer gets hit, he was striking guys out. I guess Robbie Ray's back on the IL, so he's gone.
Ray's out.
But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Jack Flaherty, I guess. What has he been doing?
Flaherty's been a little streaky lately.
He's been way more average. Back to, he's been kind of mediocre since he's gone back to the Dodgers. But yeah, Duty's offense is so good, but the difference is where you can match up with him is you can beat him in stolen bases, so you can take at least one category from him there, and then try to beat him on the other side. Where it's like,
which is how I've played everybody all year, right? I just try to win pitching, stolen bases, and if I can get average or OPS, happy days.
Cool, yeah. Yeah, where it's like me, like Duty can, as good as my offense is, Duty can beat me 6-0 on offense.
Yeah.
Is the issue.
So coming back to my rankings, I definitely have Duty number 1 still, even though without a great Burns, I'm not necessarily afraid of his team. You are the clear-cut number 2. I don't think there's any argument there. Although, again, I'm not afraid to play you. I mean, I don't know if it was like...
I'm giving away 2 categories against you.
Yeah.
Just like that, as saves and stolen bases, pretty much. I mean, I'd have like probably a 1 in 5 shot on saves against you, which can happen, but it's not good.
No. Then I think I have Ricky a slight edge above me. Just because
I like Ricky's team.
Ricky's got a solid offense. If I knew that I was going to have a hot Ellie De La Cruz coming into any given week, I would put my offense up against nearly anybody's, but I don't know if I'm going to have that week to week. Ellie, for what he is still the streaky guy. If I know that I'm going to go in and he's going to get me 3 home runs and 6 stolen bases, okay, week's over. But if I'm going in like last week and I got no dingers from Ellie, I got no stolen bases from Ellie. He hit 200, had a couple of runs, but yeah, you know what? I got 4 stolen bases from James Wood. I got 4 stolen bases from James Wood, but no home runs from James Wood. But then I got 4 fucking home runs from Spencer Torkelson off the goddamn free agent wire. Like, my offense is young and streaky. That's why I can't have faith in it week to week.
I love the Torque Daddy mattering.
Torque he didn't really matter. Mine and Mook's matchup last week didn't matter because
he could have mattered. He's mattering this late in the year, though.
Torque Daddy matters right now.
He's starting on a playoff roster in a first round matchup.
So I put Ricky slightly above myself. Although
I want to bring this up real fast about Ricky. Like, one big thing is you forget Eflin got hurt. He came back yesterday, struck out 9 guys, 7 innings. Now, granted, it was the Rockies. But I don't know. Ricky's got a sneaky good staff with Amanga. Hunter Brown's been really solid ever since his first couple starts, and he got him from Trevor. He has Zach Wheeler. Blake Snell's doing this pretty similar, not as good as last year, but similar. The last couple months, I'm just going to, strike out 10 guys every game kind of run. So, I don't know. Ricky's team is strong to me.
Ricky's team's strong, and he still has the deep closer set. That's something that
Deep
Ricky
closer
always
set.
drafts year after year. Every single year, you can always count on Ricky to go heavy on closers early in the draft. He did it this year. He may not have gotten the most elite closers. He's got one or two that are fantastic, but it's just a deep closer set. And I think that's helped put him in the position that he's in right now. So I'll give him a slight edge above me.
He's good.
And then if I'm being honest, after that, I see like a pretty significant drop off down to Jamie and Mook. And I'm going to give Jamie the edge over Mook just because he has Ohtani. And Ohtani's a guy that can go out and win you offense categories week to week. If Mook had Acuna, sure, give him that edge, right? But Acuna is not there. Mook doesn't have that dynamic offensive dynamo that's really going to go out there and dominate week to week.
And I was going to say it too. He's the only team missing that out of this group. And Gunnar Henderson, I didn't realize how he had not been as good in the second half. But he was him.
He was, yeah.
For Mook, for the first 2 or 3 months of the season. But yeah, as of late, Mook's definitely missing. I mean, Mook's still trotting Giancarlo Stanton. I guess he's hit 24 home runs. But yeah, like Mook's offense is a little lacking on that.
It is, unfortunately, for Mook. So I put...
And his pitching staff's he's been kind of just having to plug guys together all year. I know he traded for Sonny Gray and Kevin Gossman at the deadline, but he doesn't have the intimidating staff either. So like neither his offense nor his pitching really intimidates you. And he has the least amount of closers of anybody too. Yeah. It's so yeah, maybe Mook is the 6 here.
And Mook has... I mean, is Green even closing in Toronto anymore? I don't think so.
He is.
Is he still? Okay. Yeah. So,
but like I feel like because I have like 2.5 closers pretty much, but like Mook has Chad Green. He's kind of had the club's closer all year. I know before he had Neris, but I don't know if I guess Jorge Lopez is kind of closing, but that's it.
No. And so, I mean, like, okay, like Mook was talking about.
I wish I could play Mook in the first round. And as the number 3 seed, I wish he was the 6th seed.
Well, so that's where I think Mook is the 6th in my power rankings. That's why I'm really happy I'm playing him this week. And granted, like Mook almost beat me last week, but I had a really off pitching week. That happens. Hopefully it doesn't continue this week. If it does, Mook's got a good shot. But I don't want to say I'm not worried because I'm not on a bye week. I'm not playing speed right now, but I do feel like I mean, we always say any given week, you have a 60-40 advantage at best. I mean, I'm giving myself 70-30 coming into this week against Mook.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'd like that.
So how do you see your matchup with Jamie? Rankings. I mean, it seems like, you said it yourself. You
so
would
as
even
as much as I feel like I'm a better team than Jamie, and I think he feels that way too, I would much rather be playing Mook. I'd much rather be playing you again in a weird sense. Maybe not. I don't know. It's tough because I feel like you and Jamie are the only playoff teams I don't have tiebreakers against. So I'm going in with that disadvantage. Jamie's going to steal more bases than me because, he has I only have Bobby Witt. He has Ohtani, Jake McCarthy, Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah, J-Rod's at 20
I tried to trade for I tried to trade for Jake McCarthy and Tyler Fitzgerald, but, we got over that for this exact reason is why I tried to trade for them. But anyway, Jamie also Jamie's staff, though, it doesn't look intimidating or deep, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a ton of confidence in my staff right now. Week to week, just with Jared Jones been coming back. I have no Tyler Glass now. I'm confident I can out hit Jamie in a weird way. Like I feel good about that, but I think getting to 6 or 7 categories to secure a win is I have a narrow path to victory basically. But I feel like I have a good percentage advantage in all of those categories that I need. Like I would, I think I have but I think just getting to 6 or 7 might be a little statistically challenging.
I mean, so I'm not sure how I feel about Jamie's staff. I mean, okay, he's got Skubal, arguably the best pitcher in the game right now. So give credit where credit's due there. Lugo's been solid for him this year. Eovaldi's been solid for him this year. None of these guys are like next, like head and shoulders above anybody in the league, but they've been solid back end of the rotation guys. Then he goes out and adds Blanco, Crotchet, and Houck. I
Which he's not starting. He's not starting Crotchet anymore because Crotchet doesn't go more than 4 innings.
right? Like, so this is what I don't get. Why the hell did he trade for Crotchet? I mean, like,
he wanted Crotchet. He took the long-term asset side of things is what he did.
Because Crotchet's a great keeper. He's definitely going to be a great keeper next year.
That's the idea.
But that's why Mook shouldn't have traded him, because
I guess Mook got a starter that would be more useful in a playoff week and a closer for it. So I get that too. I get that trade. I just, Jamie's thinking long-term like always. And yeah.
Well, because Jamie always says it's not worth competing unless you have the bye, which I don't agree with, but I get the logic of it,
If Jamie won't say this necessarily, but if Jamie would have preferred to lose and get the number 1 overall pick.
There was a part of me that thought he was
too many times.
There's a part of me that thought that he was going to try to tank in the last 2 weeks of the season just to get there.
And that's why I was actually surprised he took that Brendan deal because of that. Like that actually made me think, okay, I think Jamie was smart in that he got the better long-term pitcher and he's like, okay, I'll give myself a shot at the playoffs because normally he doesn't do that.
Right.
But, he was very going because he didn't make the only investments he made in this year were a 2nd and 5th round pick. And that
the 2nd round pick was entirely the Brendan deal, right?
Yeah. That was that one deal. He got like 5 players for it. And he, for some reason, dropped it there and get
No, he only gave up a 2nd and a 5th. I'm looking at his draft pick right now.
Yeah. I said a 2nd and a 5th. Didn't I say? Sorry,
you said 2nd and 3rd. It's 2nd and 5th.
Yeah. 2nd and 5th. Yeah, sorry, 2nd and 5th. And if you want to put my conspiracy hat on, I think Jamie dropped Aaron Getty knowing that he would go to duties just to make sure you and I didn't win. But that's my.
Did Duty have the number 1 waiver?
He had a high enough one, I guess. I don't know how high it was, but
we might have to subpoena those text messages between those two.
I'm gonna. I got my if I know we're not broadcasting this, but I'm putting on my Alex Jones tinfoil about that one.
That would make a lot of sense. You can always ensure that those libtards are going to look out for each other.
Exactly. So they're pretty much kin, Duty and Jamie.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, I don't know where. Oh yeah. So I get Jamie was smart in a way of like, he didn't invest that much, and of course he got Class A for free, who's been the best closer. So he was able to give away Green.
There's always going to be that one trade every year where Perry gets fucked by
Jamie and Perry. Yeah, exactly. So, I will say this: there's no way but he's not winning 3 weeks in a row with this roster. I think my roster could win 3 weeks in a row, but I just don't like the way I match up with Jamie I know that sounds kind of weird to say that, but it's like I don't see Jamie beating 3 good teams in a row. However, I don't like my chances this week against him necessarily.
No, and I get that. I mean, at the end of the day, you can be the better team, but you just don't match up well against somebody else's roster. Like I think I'm one of the bottom half teams in the playoffs this year, but like I said, just based on the way that my roster is constructed, I'm confident with my pitching going against anybody week to week. Yours is the only staff that I would actually be relatively considered about, but I've beaten it twice heartily this season already, so we'll see how it works out. And I know I'm going to steal stolen bases as an offensive cat from everybody. So am I going to be able to eat my way to the ship and do that 3 weeks in a row? Odds are probably against me, to be honest. I don't think I have anywhere near a roster that should be competing for a championship because my offense is too young. It's too young, too inconsistent. But if I get that Green Bay Packers 2010 fire coming into the playoffs, who the hell knows what can happen? I mean, it's a stupid game. We play it for some reason and still have egos about it for God knows what reason.
As Mook's been saying along, and I woke up this morning when I was like frustrated about losing the bye, and I said, at least I'm playing again this week. It feels good, and I'm sure it feels good for you to be back and doing that.
It feels good. I got to be honest though. There were so many moves I would have done this year.
Oh my God! Don't start.
No. Like, if I wasn't competing this year, there were so many moves for rookies that I would have loved to do, but I couldn't because I was competing. Yeah.
But this is why we play the game. We play for this week.
Yeah, we do play for this week, but we still always have to have that eye on the long-term horizon.
I feel like I do a good job of both, but I don't get obsessed with the long term. I play for the here and now. I play to win, you know?
Well, there's a happy medium. There's those that play for the long term, which probably most predominantly are me and Howski, which, okay, that might be a reason why we're two of the managers that haven't had a ship yet, right? There's those that only play for the now, who end up being nothing more than a flash in the pan asterisk, which is Ben. And then they go back into being absolutely worthless. And Ben's probably going to be worthless for another couple of years. Then there's those that take the happy middle road, the middle way, as the Buddha would call it, which is a manager like you and Jamie to a certain extent. And those are the ones that have the most sustainable strategy.
I think so, yeah. I try to, it's not the easiest to do, but even little things like, you know, talking about that type of thing, like, you know, I was disappointed in that. If I don't win this week, I'm going to miss Jacob deGrom making a start by one start. He's going to make his last rehab start on Friday or Saturday, and so next week he'll probably be pitching in the majors. But I still like in that when I was balancing my team and thinking about keepers, it's like, oh, there's a good chance that as long as I see Jacob deGrom make a few starts and look healthy at the end of the year, that I'm going to want to keep him going into next year, and that just cost me a 9th or 10th round pick this year. And I just held him on the IL all year. And then now, you know, if he's pitching, he's, you know, probably the best, if not a top 5 pitcher.
Oh, he looks dominant.
I think
in his minor league starts, he's looked absolutely dominant.
Yeah. And I'm disappointed in that, like, oh, it's kind of a lost year and that I held on to this guy all year for that. And he's not going to help me. But it's like, oh, if I want him to look good and realize I missed out on a week, maybe because, oh, that's somebody who can go right into my keeper set for next year. And I don't need to have a player like, you know, I have enough other guys that are younger. It's like, I will take the 1 or 2 year run with Jacob deGrom on my roster is in kind of part of my balancing act.
I mean, it's just crazy that Ben didn't take the guy knowing that he wasn't going to be competing this year.
He didn't keep him, but he could have drafted him back. And I know your boy Ross Jensen was telling him to keep him. In the pod you had with Ben on,
which I didn't agree with him.
Were selected. Yeah, I agree, but he should have been redrafted in our league at some point. I couldn't believe he went as far as he did. So I'm excited for that.
It is what it is.
I get to see him in the
so
playoffs.
Before we jump off here, any final thoughts you would like to share before we head into the playoff season?
This has been one of my least stressful years. It was disappointing the way it ended, but I think it's been a really good year. I think I'm excited to play one more week, as I'd say. I think we've covered it really good on which teams, on how they're power ranked and all that. I'm just kind of, I'm excited tonight. I hate that there's no day baseball today for Labor Day, but I'm excited to, I think baseball starts off in an hour and a half, 4 o'clock. I have Jared Jones throwing tonight at 7:30. I'm ready to feel the playoff juice.
I fucking hate it. I'm going to be spending this playoff season back in Germany. So unless they're day games, I'm not even going to be able to watch or observe any of them. I'm just going to be waking up the next morning and checking what the stat line is and just going for that 30 seconds, either really angry at myself or going to be elated. But still, y'all are going to be sleeping, so I'm not going to be able to shit on anybody or enjoy the getting shit on.
You're missing out.
I am, but it is what it is. Life beckons elsewhere. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to Ian Goodenough for joining us on this Proof of Word podcast. I'm actually going to try to just run this and get it out tonight.
I think just get it out before first pitch. This people will watch it.
That's exactly the plan.
Or listen, sorry.
All right. Well,
all right,
ladies and gentlemen,
take this dog out that was sleeping behind me the whole time.
I saw him. He was adorable.
Yeah.
Looks like he's got to go to the bathroom. So on that, I'll let you get going.
He does now. Just woke up from the nap. I'll see you. Thanks, Pat.
Later, brother.
See you. Later.